Good morning and welcome to Keith Kube, legislative candidate from District 40. Thank you, Keith, for joining us for our virtual legislative candidate meetings. My name is Gina Ragland, and I'm joined today by AARP lead advocacy volunteers Susan DeCamp, Joyce Beck, and Danny DeLong. It's also my privilege to have with us today AARP Nebraska State President Dave Holmquist, and Emily Beck is also joining us to assist in some of the technical details for the program. And as a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be shared with AARP members across your district prior to the election. So Keith, we appreciate your taking the next 30 minutes of your time to discuss and meet with us to talk about the importance of issues reflected on the 50+ voter and their families in your district and across Nebraska. AARP is the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering and strengthening people 50 and older to choose how they live as they age. As people live longer, healthier lives, we know we need to think differently about what it means to age. So with that, Keith, if you want to start us off by giving us a little background about yourself and your campaign, and we're thinking about 5 minutes or less, that would be great. And once we've completed that, we'll go into some of the questions. So with that, Keith, I'll throw it back to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Appreciate the opportunity to express who I am or to introduce myself. I was born and raised on the family farm where I live now. I took care of my parents going through this entire thing, and so very familiar with the situations that we deal with as we age. As this goes, born and raised on a farm, I had a great opportunity to live with my grandfather, my uncle, and my dad on our farm, which was essentially a small town. We were also my dad was a veteran during World War II and a bomber pilot. And so after the war, we had the airport in Northeast Nebraska. I graduated as a civil engineer with most of my work in the process engineering business, went on to investment banking and then management consulting, dealing with all these social issues that come along and having businesses viable and having them to the point whereby when we put any investment, we have to make sure that we're deferring future expenses whenever we invest anything, including our tax dollars. And so as we take our tax dollars, the objective is to make sure that whatever we do, we get a better return than we would have if we did nothing. And again, as it stands, like they say, you fix a bridge before it falls in the river by repairing it instead of after it falls in the river, then have a big bill to do it after that. As we go through and dealing with in the management consulting business, I did over 1,000 businesses, and the businesses were all having a problem regarding how to take care of their people, particularly after they retire and funding their pension funds. As we look at these, it's like everything else. If we find as to how much we have to put out there, the issue more than anything else is to make sure that we have the money to fund these programs. And again, as we go through and having with my parents, and of course, having my uncle and my grandfather, knowing the problem of having enough money to live a life comfortably, it's very, very vital and important. And with that being said, we always try to do, and this is what's great about a family, is that the social network really is the extended family, and having the extended family do whatever they can to make sure grandpa and grandma are in fact being prudent with their investments, taking care of them. And so as they go forward, and one sad thing about it, we're having smaller families, and so that net is spread over fewer and fewer people. So with that being said, being very insightful as to what the problem is and how to deal with these things, I would like to do whatever we can to make sure that our senior citizens deserve and are receive the life they're entitled to with the service that they did to the country for their work and, of course, service to the communities.
Thank you, Keith, so much for that. I appreciate the background and the bio. And again, I think a lot of what you're talking about will really fit nicely in a lot of the questions we're presenting here today to have a discussion with you about. So ahead of time, we had provided you with a set of 3 issues containing 4 questions pertaining to the 50+ in Nebraska. Again, with each of those, we're looking to allot 5 minutes for each question. So our first question comes on health, caregiving, and home and community-based services, and Susan DeCamp is going to take that one. So go ahead, Susan.
Okay. Good morning, Keith. Thanks for being with us, and it's nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Home and community-based services, also known as HCBS, provides an array of services that are designed to assist individuals with activities of daily living that promotes independence to support them to age in place or delay institutional care. A family caregiver is any family member, friend, or acquaintance who cares for another person that is unable to live independently, and they provide this care without pay oftentimes. Telehealth services can be significant for older adults in rural areas or underserved communities in particular, while also providing support to family caregivers by reducing travel, waiting times, and costs associated with in-person care. So we have two questions on this topic for you. The first question is, what will you do to support the 240,000 unpaid family caregivers in Nebraska through policies such as enhanced respite services, access to telehealth, caregiver education and training, and help with out-of-pocket costs? And the second question, what will you do to protect and/or expand the home and community-based services program, particularly recruitment and retention of sufficient workforce and adequate funding of services that Nebraskans and their families rely on?
It goes back to the fundamentals that which we talked about before. Having these programs available and encouraged is vital in every respect. I have a lot of friends. I have 3 sisters who are nurses, and a brother-in-law, and 2 nephews who are doctors, and having to deal with this the entire time. The biggest problem that we're seeing in the healthcare industry is that 2/3 of all the healthcare money we spent goes to anything but provide to the patient and the doctor. It goes through all the administration and insurance and comparing, and of course infrastructure to things are going along that way. We always said in the management consulting business, it's real easy to solve the healthcare problem in the world. It's $10 trillion a year, $6 trillion a year. I'm sorry, $3 trillion a year is spent on healthcare in this country, of which over 300 million people, which means $10,000 per person per year is spent in healthcare. It is real easy to, in fact, reduce healthcare expenses if we didn't have the administration side of it. And so encouraging the next generation to take in healthcare, without a doubt, is a very vital function, and having my family deep in the healthcare industry having to deal with this is a common one. Like everything else, it has to be paid for, and the aspect of it, when we do pay that, it is hopefully being able to offset expenses which would be incurred if we don't expend them. And so as far as doing that, all things we pass must be truthful, fair, sustainable, and have integrity, which means it's not a self-serving agenda. Having the health care by family providers, and of course, bless those healthcare workers who provide that service, is a profession of which needs to be funded in one way, shape, or form. And again, like everything else, we have to make sure that what we're paying them allows them to, in fact, defer the expenses that we are enduring if we don't take care of the elderly. And I'm included in that group as well. And so what do? Is have it to the point where there is a way of making sure that it's sustainable going forward, and it doesn't put it to the point where it becomes another bureaucratic overload, which causes us all more money, which doesn't seem to get anything back as far as the return on investment.
Okay, thank you, Keith.
Thank you, Keith. Question number 2 now switches over more to our nursing facility quality of care, and Joyce Beck is going to take that. So go ahead, Joyce.
Over 20,000 Nebraskans require care in nursing facilities or assisted living communities. Facilities have closed their doors, citing reimbursement challenges and staffing shortages. Nebraskans will need an additional 4,700 more nursing assistants, LPNs, and RNs by 2028 to meet Nebraska's care needs. Everyone, regardless of where they reside, deserves to be treated with dignity and respect and have access to quality medical care. Better staff to resident ratios improve the overall quality of care and well-being of residents. Workforce recruitment, retention, and job satisfaction challenges are prevalent across the long-term services and support industry. Causes of workforce challenges must be identified and implemented to respond to the growing need for high quality care. So Keith, our question is this: What would you do to improve the quality of nursing facility care for Nebraska residents, including addressing the growing long-term care workforce crisis in the state, professional education and training, and accountable facility reimbursement?
Back to the same premise we talked about at the beginning. They have the ability to have these things funded. I just saw the nurses in certain areas that are striking because of the healthcare issue caused by the COVID and all the overreach that the government was putting in place, causing the very thing that we're complaining about now. And so as we're going forward, again, my sisters are in the business and understanding what they go through and having the regulations that they deal with, plus most of the time they're doing with bureaucracy, which is causing issues, which is causing a lot of people. And my brother-in-law is a classic example, is that being a doctor, it's almost to the point where he doesn't want to practice anymore because the bureaucratic overload or bureaucratic issues that are coming down about how things are taken care of. And even to the point where the doctor being able to prescribe in their best interest what should be done to help the health patient in the best way possible. So what can be done? Back to the same thing. I teach classes in high schools and colleges, and I tell them the amount of money you're paid is a direct result of how much a better says to the cost of the problem you're solving. I can't pay you $100,000 a year to solve a $50,000 a year problem. Not to say that our senior citizens don't have a price tag. They don't. They are worth it because we love them and they got us here to this point. And so the preservation of life from the cradle to the grave is important, and everything we do should survive or revolve around that. And so what are we going to do? It's like any profession. The professions need to make sure that they can do what they're supposed to do and not deal with the bureaucratic nightmare, which continues to plague the industry, getting us more and more regulations that doesn't help the patient at all. It just puts more expenses that doesn't seem to give any return on investment.
Thank you, Keith. Our final question for discussion today centers around livable communities and helping people stay in their home. And Danny DeLong, our next volunteer, is going to take that one. So go ahead, Danny.
Good morning, Keith. Thank you for
Good
being
morning.
here with us today.
Thank you.
The majority of people that are 50 plus thinking about retiring and 65 and retired or more want to age in place. They want to live in their home as long as they can. They'd like to live in their home community after they can't live in their home any longer. So that's one of the precepts that we're dedicated to as AARP. And so they want to live in what's known as a livable community. It is safe and secure, number one. Two, it offers affordable housing and transportation options that allow individuals to travel by multiple means. And three, it provides supportive community services and features such as access to healthcare and high-speed internet. Affordable transit options are critical to support older Nebraskans aging in place. High-speed internet should be affordable, reliable, and accessible for all Nebraskans. Digital skills development, which we tend to call digital literacy, is also essential to obtaining the benefits of high-speed internet access in the home. So our question is, what will you do to ensure all Nebraskans, mainly those 50 plus, have access to livable communities which offer affordable housing, diverse transportation options, adequate health care, and affordable, reliable, and accessible high-speed internet, including digital skills development?
The list that you listed is non-discriminatory. It is true for everyone. Being 18, getting your first job, or going on to a lot retiring, everyone wants clean, healthy, affordable And of course, all the services. We always say that if you have the internet and the UPS truck showing up, you can live anywhere in the world, because what else do you want? And again, as we see these communities evolve, I've come from the real estate business and understanding that as these particular facilities come around, we have to make them to the point where they're affordable. And there's methods in the financing industry that allows those to happen. Again, back to the family, making sure that the information, the people that are in fact expecting these services are able to provide them and look forward. And one of the problem platforms that I'm working on is my campaign, is to have whatever we do become sustainable and make sure that whatever we spend money on tax-wise, it is making the problem better and not worse. Too often, some of these investments do nothing more than exacerbate the problem. They address the symptom and not the problem. And if they solve the problem, they'd be out of a job. So as far as all the things that you're asking and suggesting, that's a common desire for everyone. No one, that's not any different for any over 50 or under 50. I'm just turning 74, and all I can tell you is I did everything I could in my life to make sure that I was as independent and self-sufficient as possible. And I tell my clients and my patients and my constituents the same thing. We've got to make sure that we do what we can to take care of ourselves as much as possible and have it to the point whereby the society that we are in fact providing with our tax dollars doesn't make a dependent society, but makes them self-sufficient as much as possible for as long as possible. And of course, and the safety net out there. The same with the healthcare industry. We have to take care of ourselves somehow. And like I said before, if everybody puts $10,000 a year on the table, and we would be able to have free health care for everybody. But that's really not realistic. And 2/3 of that money goes to the bureaucracy. So I'd like to get this bureaucracy out of the way so that we can live with that money going to the direct solving the problem instead of putting a bureaucracy on top of it. And so as this is going forward, the things you're suggesting is a nirvana, which we've all striving for. I work every day to work from that in the end, and my objective in life is to make the world a better place. And so as we go along, if you do make the world a better place, they say you only have two purposes in life. One is to save your soul and make the world a better place. And theoretically, I would like to believe that if I do make the world a better place, I can save my soul, and hopefully that we can get society to follow that same mantra.
Thank you, Keith. Appreciate your response.
Thank you, Keith. That kind of concludes the three questions that the three issues we had presented today. And so as we're coming to the end of our meeting, I would like to offer back to you the final minutes to offer any closing thoughts, comments that you might have for our members and the constituents of your district. So
I guess, like I mentioned before, we have until 11 o'clock. And so I guess, do you have any other questions for me that want to be clarified on some of the points that I've made, please?
does anyone else have any questions around the table that they'd like to address? I don't see any at this time, Keith, but again, I would close it. First of all, thanking you for your time for visiting with us. We wish you the best with your campaign, and thank you for meeting with AARP today. I definitely would be happy to follow up with you, or if you want to give me a call after or an email, we can certainly find a time to visit further. But again, thank you for your time and visiting with us, and take care.
Thank you. I will. It's a pretty busy time. And so I guess as far as having these done, none of you can vote for me, but I really appreciate your help and any kind of the support if you believe that I could be the candidate that would best represent the interests that you're in fact bringing along, as you know how I think. And I couldn't express more concern about these very things, which is essentially what I did my entire career in businesses as well, is that the objective is get these businesses to survive, because if they don't survive, they cost us all money. And again, as it comes to the bottom line of we've got to get these things so they're sustainable, and that whatever we do does fix the problem, not the symptom.
Thank you, Keith. We look forward to future conversations. And again, thank you for taking the time to visit with AARP today. Have a great day.
Good
Thank you,
morning.
Keith.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.